This story is still fresh in my head, since it literally happened just last week. My extended family is a little unusual. I won't get into all the details, but let's just say nearly everyone is either a gun enthusiast, an avid hunter, or both. While most families take vacations in the summer, ours tends to do it in the winter. And we don't go on normal vacations either. Each year, the adults pool their money and rent a house for a week, usually someplace tucked away in the woods. This year, it was a cabin in Vermont. Although calling it a cabin doesn't feel right, it was more like a castle, big enough to hold all of us. And that's where the strange part comes in. As a family, we play some pretty unusual games, most of them involving some kind of shooting. But the weirdest tradition happens on the second to last night. All the adults bundle up in warm clothes and head into the woods for an all-out game of laser tag. I know how insane that sounds. Trust me, I've had plenty of people walk out of my life after seeing how eccentric my family can be. But every year the winner gets a nice cash prize and bragging rights. Plus, the equipment is no joke. My Uncle Lucian built this industrial-grade laser tag set himself, and he was the most excited of all of us to play. The rules were simple. Every person for themselves. The last one standing won. If more than one person was left by midnight, the prize money got split. Once you were tagged, you had to head back to the fire pit near the house. As soon as the second-to-last player returned, everyone would fire a round into the air, so the winner knew it was over. I had just turned 18, which meant this was the first year I was finally allowed to play. Honestly, I couldn't wait. It wasn't even about the money. I just thought it sounded fun. Before we headed outside, Lucian gave everyone a quick rundown on how the gear worked and where to keep our markers to keep the game fair. Then he told us all to set a 10-minute timer on our phones, so we'd know exactly when to start. Without warning, he bolted into the woods like he was running a race, and my relatives quickly scattered in every direction. Most of them ran uphill, so I decided to head downhill instead. I figured fewer people would go that way, and it might give me a better chance of lasting longer. Even though it was dark, the snow on the ground made everything surprisingly easy to see. I can't remember the exact number of players, but it was a lot. At least 10 of my cousins and a couple sets of parents, including my own. Our family is huge. I kept moving deeper and deeper into the forest. I found a small spot that gave me a good view up the hill, so I decided to stop there and catch my breath. I sat for a while, trying to think through my next move. My plan was to walk along the slope and gradually work my way upward, maybe flank whoever was still up there. So I started moving left, hugging the slope. I must have gone for about 15 minutes, putting as much distance between me and the house as I could. Time wasn't a problem. It was still a couple hours until midnight. As I began to climb, I heard a faint crunch from my left, the side facing away from my uncle's place. I dove behind the nearest tree, praying whoever it was wouldn't get a clean shot. After a few seconds, I peered out, but didn't see anyone. Then, squinting through the trees, I noticed a barely there trail of footprints way off in the distance. They led to a big tree about 15 yards behind me, and I was certain someone was standing there. Suddenly it hit me. Why hadn't they just tagged me? I was out in the open and totally unaware. They must have been trying to sneak up. I took off up the hill, hoping to get out of range before they could shoot. I was about to cut right back toward the house when I spotted another set of footprints farther left. This one started deep in the woods, came toward me, then looped back into the trees. Had someone tried to outflank me? That would mean they'd gone deeper into the woods than I had, which didn't make sense. Before I could work it out, something crashed on the slope I just climbed. A thud like someone falling into the snow. I kept running, this time heading back toward the house. I checked my phone. It was just after 11. I couldn't believe an hour had already passed. As I ran, I stumbled onto a fresh trail of footprints leading straight to house. So I picked up the pace, hoping to catch someone off guard. I passed a row of trees and saw my cousin Corbo walking at a steady pace with his laser gun. I crouched, pulled out my pistol, and nailed his marker. It started blinking. He slammed his fist against a tree, shook his head, and kept moving toward the house. I grinned, pumped on the adrenaline of getting a kill. With that high, I hatched a plan to catch whoever had been stalking me. I sprinted forward for a minute, then doubled back and slipped behind a tree, without leaving an obvious trail. It was perfect. Anyone following my footprints wouldn't know I was there. While I waited, my marker suddenly started blinking. I was furious. The beam was coming from the spot I had just been. It had to be the person who'd been tailing me. I stood up, expecting whoever shot me to turn off their laser. They didn't. The beam stayed trained on me like a taunt. I wanted to see who'd been behind me the whole time, so I started walking toward the light. The shooter didn't stop shining even as I closed in. All I could make out were their hands. The rest of them was hiding behind a tree. Then gunshots cracked behind me. I froze. Impossible. I must have won. Corbo must have been the final kill. But who had shot me? I kept staring at the thin beam pointing at me until the shooter stepped out from behind the tree. It wasn't anyone I knew. There were two strangers standing side by side. A crunch sounded behind me. I whipped my head around and saw a man in a ski mask holding a trash bag in one hand and a knife in the other. He noticed I'd seen him and sprinted toward me. I dropped my gear and ran. Screaming at the top of my lungs, I could hear all three of them chasing me, shouting things that didn't even sound like English. I raced past the trees, pushing through the snow as fast as I could, praying I didn't trip. They were right on my heels. I didn't dare look back, but I knew they were close. Finally, I spotted the lights of the house in the distance. I kept screaming and running, my legs burning, my body on the edge of collapse. I was almost in the clearing when I saw Lucian barreling toward me, hunting rifle in hand. He fired 3 shots into the air above my head. I heard whoever was behind me stumble before running back into the woods. I collapsed at Lucian's feet, gasping for air, and passed out from sheer exhaustion right there in the snow. The next morning was rough. My aunt explained that she had tripped during the game and dropped her laser gun, which explained how the strangers in the woods had won. Corbo had tagged 6 relatives before I caught him, which is why he was so frustrated when I finally nailed him. He had actually been the last kill. Lucian and my dad had rushed into the woods with their rifles, but couldn't find anything. They tried following the footprints, but there were too many branching paths and dead ends, so they eventually gave up. That whole day was a blur. The adults contacted the house owners and reported everything to the police. The next morning, I woke to yelling from downstairs. Lucian was losing it, shouting toward the woods at the top of his lungs. I ran down and saw a single snowman facing the house. In its hand was the laser gun my aunt had dropped. Lucian fired a few rounds into its head, yelled some more threats, and stormed back inside. It's only been about a week, but I'll send an update if anything else happens.